Good evening. I'm speaking to you from the studios of Worldview, where we examine the forces shaping our world with clarity and context. Tonight, we turn to a heated exchange that unfolded on CNN's NewsNight with Abby Phillip, where panelists dissected a recent appearance by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez at the Munich Security Conference. What began as criticism of her handling of a question on U.S. policy toward Taiwan escalated into a broader confrontation over hypocrisy, media treatment of political figures, and the application of uniform standards to public figures across party lines. This discussion highlights ongoing tensions in how we evaluate leadership, expertise, and accountability in an era of intense polarization. Before we start, wherever you're watching or listening from, drop a comment, hit like, and subscribe to the channel. Today, we'll continue this conversation in the comments and respond to your questions. Let's begin by setting the scene with precision. The Munich Security Conference is one of the premier annual gatherings for global leaders, diplomats, and policymakers to address pressing international challenges, from conflicts in Europe to tensions in the Indo-Pacific. Representative Ocasio-Cortez, known primarily for her domestic policy advocacy on issues like economic inequality, climate action, and social justice, was participating in a panel discussion. During the session, moderated by Bloomberg's Francine Lacqua, she was asked a pointed question: would and should the United States commit troops to defend Taiwan if China were to attempt to take control by force? Her response unfolded in real time under the glare of international cameras. She began by acknowledging the long-standing nature of U.S. policy on the matter, a reference to the strategic ambiguity that has guided American approach for decades, where the U.S. neither explicitly commits nor rules out military intervention. She emphasized the importance of deterrence through economic measures, diplomatic positioning, and efforts to prevent escalation altogether. The goal, she stressed, should be to ensure such a confrontation never materializes. However, the delivery included multiple pauses, filler words, and a circuitous phrasing that left some observers questioning whether she fully grasped the nuances or was prepared for the query. Conservative commentators and social media accounts aligned with MAGA perspectives seized on the moment almost immediately. They labeled it a word salad, drawing comparisons to earlier criticisms of other Democratic figures. Memes circulated portraying her as unprepared or out of her depth, with some suggesting it signaled an ill-advised early positioning for a potential future national campaign. The mockery extended to suggestions that this was emblematic of broader shortcomings in progressive foreign policy thinking, but the critique did not go unchallenged. On CNN, host Abby Phillip convened a panel that included voices from across the ideological spectrum. Among them, business figure Kevin O'Leary, who has frequently appeared as a Trump supporter, and other commentators including Politics Girl, whose content often critiques conservative narratives. The segment turned contentious as Phillip played a montage of past statements by former President Donald Trump, now in his second term, that involved factual inaccuracies, mispronunciations, or confusing references in foreign policy contexts. Examples included instances where Trump referred to Greenland as Iceland during discussions of Arctic strategy and NATO commitments, conflating the Danish territory he once sought to acquire with the independent Nordic nation. There were references to mixing up South Africa with South America in remarks about regional dynamics. Other clips showed him discussing conflicts in ways that appeared to merge unrelated nations, such as referencing Azerbaijan alongside Albania instead of Armenia. These were presented not as isolated slips, but as part of a pattern where high-profile errors drew less sustained outrage from the same quarters, now amplifying criticism of Ocasio-Cortez. The panel discussion grew heated. O'Leary maintained that Ocasio-Cortez's response stood out for its lack of clarity, suggesting it warranted sharper rebuke because it occurred on a global platform where precision matters. He argued that while everyone makes mistakes, the context differed. Trump often spoke from prepared materials or as an executive acting on expert advice, whereas Ocasio-Cortez appeared to venture into unfamiliar territory without sufficient grounding. Others pushed back, pointing out that hesitation and careful phrasing can reflect deliberate thoughtfulness rather than ignorance. They noted that Ocasio-Cortez was not positioned as a foreign policy specialist, but as a member of Congress expanding her engagement with international issues, a move some viewed positively as broadening her scope. A key thread in the debate was the perceived double standard. Critics of the criticism argued that similar or more substantial errors by Trump, including those on the world stage during summits, press conferences, and international forums, rarely generated the same level of sustained derision from conservative media or figures like O'Leary. When Trump misstated geographical facts or confused allied nations, the response often involved downplaying, contextualizing, or moving on quickly. In contrast, Ocasio-Cortez's brief hesitation became fodder for extended ridicule, with some tying it to speculation about her political ambitions. This raises important questions about how we measure competence in public life. Foreign policy is complex, requiring deep knowledge of history, alliances, military capabilities, and economic interdependencies. Taiwan represents one of the most volatile potential flashpoints in U.S.-China relations. The U.S. maintains a policy of strategic ambiguity to deter aggression while avoiding provocation. Any public statement on troop commitments carries risks. Too firm a pledge could escalate tensions. Too vague a one could undermine deterrence. Ocasio-Cortez's answer aligned with the broader goal of de-escalation and prevention, even if the phrasing lacked polish. She highlighted diplomatic and economic tools as preferable to military confrontation, a position shared by many analysts who warn that direct U.S.-China conflict over Taiwan would carry catastrophic global consequences. Defenders of consistent standards argue that if momentary verbal stumbles disqualify someone from serious consideration for higher office, the bar should apply equally. Trump's extensive record includes numerous instances where factual inaccuracies occurred in high-stakes settings, yet they did not derail his political trajectory. Historical precedents exist. George W. Bush once struggled to name the leader of Pakistan during his 2000 campaign, referring repeatedly to General rather than Pervez Musharraf. He went on to serve 2 terms as president. Such moments are often chalked up to the pressures of live discourse rather than fundamental incapacity. The panel also touched on broader cultural dynamics. Some participants suggested that gender and ideological bias play a role in the intensity of the backlash. Progressive women in politics, particularly those challenging established power structures, often face heightened scrutiny over communication style. The term word salad has been deployed selectively, more frequently against female figures like Kamala Harris or Ocasio-Cortez than against male counterparts with comparable slips. This perception of uneven treatment fuels accusations of hypocrisy and fuels division rather than constructive dialogue. Beyond the verbal elements, Ocasio-Cortez used her Munich platform to deliver pointed critiques of emerging global trends. She spoke of entering an era of authoritarianism, where certain actors seek to divide the world for self-interest, and highlighted concerns about influence in the Western Hemisphere. These remarks, delivered with conviction, contrasted with the hesitancy on the Taiwan question and underscored her willingness to engage boldly on systemic issues, even if not as an established expert. The exchange on CNN ultimately became a microcosm of larger American political realities. In a media environment where clips are isolated, amplified, and weaponized, single moments can define narratives disproportionately. Yet genuine leadership involves growth, learning from missteps, and adapting. Ocasio-Cortez's participation in Munich represents an effort to step beyond her core domestic focus, a positive development in a Congress where many members specialize narrowly. Encouraging such expansion, while holding everyone to rigorous standards, serves the public interest better than partisan pile-ons. As we reflect on this, consider the implications for how we evaluate potential future leaders. Should one imperfect answer overshadow a record of advocacy, or does it signal areas for improvement? The answer lies in applying the same lens consistently, regardless of party or persona. Political discourse benefits when we prioritize substance over selective outrage. We invite your perspectives. Does this reveal a double standard in political accountability? How should figures prepare for international scrutiny? Share your thoughts below. We'll engage directly. This has been Worldview. Thank you for joining us. Stay informed, stay engaged. Good night.